there's some really interesting alternative, quote unquote, for lack of a better word, storylines that don't really seem to be resolved. Like, I forgot the guy right in the middle there.
Alec.
Yeah, Alec and his, that Dane is in love with him, and Clary says to him at one point, "You're in love with Jace." So is that all going to come up in the next book, in the next installment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm glad that they preserved it. It would have been sad to see it go. Alec's a big fan favorite character, and him and Magnus and their star-crossed love is one of the big, passionate, fan couples for the book. People care about them, about as much as they care about Jason and Clary. Right. It's just in the first book they just meet. It's
so the seed is like half planted right now.
Well, he starts out in love with Jace, and I think a lot of it is, is Jace is kind of a safe option. He's around him a lot, and Jace is hot, and he feels safe around him, and so he feels like he's kind of safe to have this first crush and have it be on Jace. Who knows? One of the things that Kevin did that's good is if you admit, and this may be one of those things that if you know the books, it. If you watch it and you look at what he's doing in every scene, he's freezing her out and he's focused on Jamie, completely. Yeah. His focus is Jace. He's the one he moves in to save. When he gets injured, he's when Jace is looking at Clary, Alec is looking over furious. So you guys see him doing all of that stuff in the background. Right. Which is how Clary figures it out in the first place. But yeah, all of that stuff does develop, and I really hope that we get to make a second and a third, because Alec's progress from being kind of this hopeless crush on Jace, and then realizing that Magnus is in love with him, and then realizing that he's in love with Magnus back.
Okay. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it.
What do you think was gonna happen?
No, well, I don't know, because now it's working, because I'm like, now there's the Luke and Leia thing happening between them. I'm like, maybe Jace is gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna switch over.
Well, he might. That would be, if they decide to go that direction, that's fine.
Cool.
So poor Magnus would be very lonely.
Right. So just in terms of now more of a literary question, has the success of The Mortal Instruments as a series book and now as a film changed the way you work or your process in any way, or what other significant changes in your life you'd like to talk about?
I think that for me, it hasn't changed my process, but it's been very disconcerting because I've been working on the final book in the series, and for the past year there's been an enormous amount of public and private focus on the first book. And so this is a 6-book series, and these characters go on this huge journey. They change, the relationships change, they change as people, and so I'm writing about them at the end of their journey, the final sort of conflict, the way that, these stories are, essentially sort of coming of age stories, I'm writing about the kind of people that they turn out to be, and then, I'm constantly confronting where they started, how inexperienced Clary was, how much she didn't know, how Simon starts out as a mundane. I'm dealing with the characters the way they are now, and then to be constantly confronted with the way that they used to be is kind of a disconcerting process. But I think in a way it's good. I think it's caused, in terms of changing the process, I think it's caused me to spend a lot of time in the 6th book kind of remembering how they started out, and kind of having each of them revisit a little bit mentally, that was where I was and this is where I am now.
Last question, I know City of Ashes is locked and loaded and ready to go. What about City of Glass and Beyond, and any hopes of other Shadowhunter series being adapted, or Magisterium, if you're at liberty to say?
I can tell you what I know, which is, I guess City of Ashes is locked and loaded. I still sort of can't believe that, but they're moving on it.
Amazing.
And I think that, unless there's some kind of, fingers crossed that everything goes well. One of the great things about kind of doing a project with an indie company like Constantine is it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to do $500 million box office worldwide. It can be successful, with more modest returns. So I feel like they're very dedicated to the idea of building it as a franchise, which is great. So I feel like if they make City of Ashes, they'll probably make City of Glass. Cool. And I think that's great because they'll round it out as a trilogy. And they also have the rights to the Infernal Devices, which are the prequel series set in the Victorian era. And that is right now in the process of locking in a director.
Okay.
So
that's also
that's great. I'm excited about that. And Magisterium is an interesting case because I'm writing the screenplay.
Oh, fabulous. Saw the film last night.
Yeah.
You bring a really chic edge to the film.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, really. It was like really the chicest urban fantasy I've ever seen.
Oh, good. Yay.
So what was your most favorite part of making it?
I think the fact that all of us truly became so close during filming, because we were all training together pre-production, sweating together, bruising together, bleeding together. I think when you have that experience so early on, it really unites everybody as such a unity in a group that the Shadowhunters need to be. And so it was really, it's hard to look back and define what was shooting and what was off time, because it really was like summer camp.
Would you feel more pressure, excitement being part of such a large franchise that already has a sequel locked and loaded and ready to go?
Yeah, that's the thing. We were going to all these mall tours and like everyone's so excited and enthusiastic, but they haven't seen anything yet. And you're kind of going, I really hope you like the first one, because too bad there's a second one coming anyway. It's like you want to make sure that that of course the second one lives up to it. But I've just been talking to Harold and he's got the newest draft, which I haven't read yet, and he's like, oh my God, you enjoyed making the first one. Just wait till the second one. And I know that my potential with fighting and stuff comes to life way bigger, because originally in the first one it's just like you just need to see that she has a potential and the skill factor is kind of there, whereas in the second one it's like way more fighting.
And you're going to be getting a lot more
more
tattoos,
weapons and
runes.
tattoos, and exactly. So for that I'm super excited. The buzz is amazing. Like I said, going to these tours and having people just like faint already and you're like, really? And I've been attached for 3 years now.
Okay.
So for me, not as long as obviously 10 years, but I was a fan of the books, so it's like finally the story is coming to life. And for me, having been attached to it for 3 years, it's like, you know, I was thinking about this day years ago, whereas now in fact it's happening, and you kind of go, wow, that went by like that all of a sudden. We were filming last summer and we would never have thought that within a year we'd already be going to shoot the sequel and have the first one out. Like, it's crazy.
What do you think about this specific YA series made it into the phenomenon that it is? You said you were a fan of the books.
Yeah, I always loved Cassandra's comedic undertone to the story. I think that that's absent from other teen franchises. If there was ever a moment that the audience thinks we're taking ourselves too serious, someone cracks a joke and we laugh, and we're not laughing at each other, we're laughing with the audience, you know? And I think you need those moments of lightness in such a dark, edgy, graphic world that also brings a realness and a very grounded nature to the story. I love that Clary is not defined by romance. It's not a romance. It's an action adventure about a young girl finding her voice. She never victimizes herself. You know, she's thrown these crazy who, what, when, where, why questions every 5 minutes, and instead of allowing those moments to define her, she stays true to her morals, and she can totally show that she's vulnerable and confused, as any young girl would, but at the end of the day, she like powers through that, and her single-minded track is finding her mom. It's not like, I mean, the difference between her and other characters in franchises we've seen, Clary is born something, she just doesn't know it yet. She's not choosing to become something that she's not. She's not denying a past or a future or a present. She is what she is, finds out that she is this thing, and then just kind of runs with it. So it's very much a self-discovery story that any young girl would go through. Granted, they're not a shadow hunter, but every young girl can relate to that confusion of growing up in identity crisis.
Who were your acting idols growing up?
Old school Audrey Hepburn, but I have always loved watching, obviously, Meryl Streep, and Keira Knightley. I really, again, she's badass, but she's also quirky, and she also plays the British dramas in such a way that I can only imagine her playing them, you know. Those actresses just command the screen, and they can say so much without necessarily saying anything, and I think that like speaks volumes.